With things revealed in 2018 having to do with the first commandment of honor your mother and father, and the sixth commandment, not to covet, it's interesting looking again at the story of Dinah in Genesis 34. The scribes are again at work here, hiding what the true story is that's taking place here. There are a number of things that do not make sense in this story. Point out number one, the children, supposedly of just Jacob, many have estimated Dinah is approximately 14 years old. And 2 chapters later, Joseph is turning 17 years old when he is sold into slavery. And since the time that Jacob is getting his wife is supposedly a 14-year period, putting these points all together, all of the sons are in their teens, with a few possibly in their early 20s. And yet in this story, these sons are acting like they're adults, specifically Simon and Levi, who take adult-like action and supposedly have this great ability to go in and murder a whole town of men. Just these 2 youngsters. This, of course, leads to the second point, that Father's commandment is do not kill. And yet here are the supposed chosen people, and they're going about killing people. Not only that, they're killing people who supposedly have agreed to enter into covenant with Father by circumcising. And doubly egregious what they're doing here. And third, we'll point out as we go over the verses here, they have this uncanny ability to mind read what other people are thinking. Let's also note here that Dinah has no real representation of herself. There's no verses of her talking or anything stated from her. It just seems to be her father and her brothers that are doing all the talking. In the first part of the story, verses 1 through 5, we see that there was an interaction that's taking place with Dinah and Shechem, the son of Hamor, prince of the country. In the previous chapter, chapter 33, in chapter 33, verse 18, Jacob came to Salem, the city of Shechem. Interesting, as we now deal with this individual called Shechem. I believe they've covered up the story here by making it appear that there was a rape that took place, or inappropriate sex between the 2 consenting sex before they were married. I don't think either thing happened here. I believe this Shechem, if that is his real name, saw the daughter, Dinah, and wished to pursue her and marry her. And that is why he came to Jacob to get the daughter as wife. Not many rapists would pursue the father of the woman to want to take her as wife. Then you have this with the supposed story of David's son raping his half and then despising her afterwards. This is usually the case if this is what's going on. But what I'm going to point out is that up until this point in the storyline in Genesis, from Abraham forward, we see where each of these patriarchs has gotten their spouse. And in this case, it's wives that they've gotten. Abraham, we have the story where Abraham got his wife from, then Isaac going and getting his wife from their kindred, and then Jacob and Esau going to get their wives again from the kindred, from Laban's daughters. Why all of a sudden does it stop and we don't see where the sons are getting their brides from? The story is covering that up, that there was another group of people besides this bloodline who were trying to keep father's ways. When they were notified that one of father's ways, which they were not fully keeping, was when one marries, they are to circumcise, the male is to circumcise in order to enter into covenant of marriage, they gladly accepted this. As we see in verse 9 of Genesis 34, they are stressing, make ye marriages with us, and give your daughter unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade here therein, and get you possession. Even down in verse 16, then we will give your daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters to us. There's only one daughter with Jacob and Esau. There's only one daughter that we know of. Dinah, that's the woman in case here that Shechem wants to marry. So what are they talking about? The advantages with the sons of Jacob and Esau, they are going to be getting more daughters from them than the people of that city would be getting from Jacob and Esau's children. So this first point I'm trying to get across is that the story is showing where the children of Jacob and Esau got their spouses. It was from the city. The city where people were similarly keeping the ways of father that they knew at that point. The second point is that circumcision is brought up here, as we've learned. Circumcision is part of the marriage covenant. It is the first commandment, and it is part of Father's way for our relationship with humans, of the male and female, to enter into covenant. This is why the men particularly, agree to the seemingly outrageous asking that in order for the one man to marry a daughter, all the men in the city must get circumcised. It makes absolutely no sense. Nobody would go along with that just for this one guy. But if they were truly seeking to follow Father's ways, and they learn that part of marriage is to be circumcised for the male, all those who were married in the city would have agreed to this. Again, if they were truly following Father's ways, and when an instruction they didn't fully understand or had lost was brought back to their attention, they willingly agreed to it. This has to be covered up in the story, because you can't see that circumcision has to do with marriage, and yet this is what's taking place in the story. Circumcision has to take place before there can be a marriage. And so we have this type of mind reading and this ability to see what the inner thoughts of what they're doing here, these men. In verse 23, Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell with us. This is the reasoning why they go along with having circumcision, supposedly. All these men when it's only one man who's seeking a bride. It's ridiculous. And again, there would be, if there were supposedly 12 sons, there'd be 12 daughters coming from this community, and only one daughter coming from Jacob, that being Dinah. So they would not gain control of that, especially if there's the belief that the man is the head. So thou shalt not kill in verse 25, and it came to pass on the third day, interesting third day, when they were sore, the two of the sons of Jacob, Simon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the male. So here these two young men who probably are in their late teens are killing all these men, and no one can defend themselves against these two teenagers? The story don't make sense. And again, Father's command is do not kill, and yet here they are killing. And Levi, who's supposed to be the tribe of the priests later on, here they are killing people. There is no such thing as righteous killing. Father does not kill. That's why the commandment is thou shalt not kill. No exceptions. And we're not talking about defending yourself if someone's trying to kill you. So in verse 27, then the rest of the brothers come upon the city of slain people and spoiled the city because they had defiled their sister. It just absolutely doesn't make any sense. They're doing evil here. And even Jacob's lackluster response to what Simon and Levi did, you've troubled me. Boy, it's way worse than that. And it starts this attitude that runs throughout the Old Testament and even New Testament, that the scribes put in this being higher, above other people, coveting above other people, that you can do whatever you want to them, but they can't do that to you. These are not Father's ways, and this whole story has been twisted with such obvious evil doing that's taking place here. And again, this is to cover up three things, and we'll go over that. One, they have to cover up that there are other people who are trying to follow Father's ways. They can't have, scribes can't have that. It's only the quote-unquote Jewish people, the Israelites. That's not the case. There are many people trying to follow Father's ways, and Father is not a respecter of persons. He respects what you do. So they had to cover that up, that there are other people trying to follow Father's way. And with doing that, they cover up the fact that this is where the sons got their wives from, this city. All except for the younger ones, Joseph being one of them, who hadn't taken away. Second thing that they're covering up here is that circumcision is the first command. You enter into that in order to have an honorable marriage. The man must circumcise, the woman has her circumcision with the hymen being broken on the wedding night, the consummation of the marriage. They have to hide this. They can't let this story stand that that's what its purpose was. Instead, they use this as a ruse, a trap. This is a trap that they use, just as they have used circumcision as a trap for the whole world. Its purpose is not seen, and so they get trapped into thinking that it's something, some useless thing that happens when a child is 8 days old, when that child has no reasoning, no thought, is not an adult to make the choice to do these things. So it's an act that is not willfully done by the person; it's done by someone else to that person. Makes no sense. The correct purpose for circumcision is to enter into marriage, and that's what is shown here in the story, and they got to cover that up too. So instead, they use this as a ruse to get them sore and to come in and kill them all. Again, breaking another commandment. And additional evidence showing that this is not what actually took place, has been altered by the Pharisees, is that Joseph, who ends up marrying the daughter of Shechem and Dinah in Egypt, they head down there way before Jacob and the others come down when the famines start. He gets his wife from Shechem. Shechem is not dead. Shechem's alive. Never been killed. They're righteous, trying to follow Father's ways. Joseph's children, Manasseh and Ephraim. Ephraim names one of his sons after Shechem. So if Shechem was just this rapist, it would make no sense for him to name his son after his grandfather. It's really important to see through the lies that are strewn throughout this story, because they can't stand. Thou shalt not kill, and they're killing here. The purpose of circumcision is hidden. The other people are seeking Father's way. That has to be hidden. And they set traps for us by rewriting stories, taking things out, putting lies in. They're constantly setting traps for us, and that's the lesson to be learned here.